A couple of little things before we start. We have a need in the nursery, and a few years ago we used to have somebody that we would give a love offering to, and she would come take care of our nursery for us, and it was really kind of a good thing. So if you guys know of somebody who would like to do that, they don't have to be from our church. They'll have to go through a background check, so you'll have to understand that. Well, when they get up and leave, it kind of leaves up open spots, huh? Oh my goodness. So if you know someone that is really good with kids and might like to maybe help us out with our nursery, and then they're not from our church, but they'd like to make a little extra cash or something like that, we'd kind of like to keep that in mind. Also, this Friday and Saturday, there's a marriage conference, and at Christ Community Church, Judy and I will be part of that, and so if you can, I think it'd be a good thing. We've already got some couples going from our church to this, and I'd really kind of like to recommend it. Now, because I'm so good, I don't really have to go to one, so I don't really. And that's kind of where we are today on this. Why are you shaking your head, Shirley? That's not very thoughtful. But I'm going to have to say some things today that I don't do very good. Okay. We've been working on James chapter 1, verse 19. And you can rip this verse apart, and we have been on, how long have we been on this verse now? A month? 3 years? Okay, yeah, you can't get away from it. But it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. I don't do that, okay? There was a night, it was a Friday night, and there was about 10,000 people in the stands. And we were having the fight of our life. I think it was us and Clovis. And we were really trying to get through that fight. And words were being said and things were going on. And they knew that I was a boisterous person. The refs know that. They had it amongst them. They said, Coach Bryant is a mouthy person. So he always has something to say. And so that I had that, like, I don't know. They knew me. Well, I turned around backwards, and I was talking to one of the kids, and all of a sudden the whistle blows, and they tell me, you're gone. For once in my life, I did not say something. And they kicked me off the field. Guys, that reputation follows us. I have a rough reputation when it comes to my mouth. Okay? So I sometimes really struggle with this. So if I struggle going through this message today, understand that it's rough to look in the mirror as you say things. Can I get a witness from that? So you understand. But there's a verse, and I think McKenna said it this morning, Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only, does everybody see that in your verse? But only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those around you who are listening. Guys, I'm serious about this part. This is probably the worst problem Christians have. We can talk about all the other issues in life, but our mouth is probably our most uncontrolled unit. Even James brings it out, and Paul a couple of times brings it out. He says you can take a bit. Now some of you know this and some of you don't, but you slide a bit into a horse's mouth, you slide over their tongue, and it sits back on their back part of their tongue and in the back of their mouth. You can guide them that way. You are controlling the tongue. So you control the whole horse. And James compares it to a ship. That you just take a rudder and you can move a whole ship with the rudder. Just one little flap. Well, we have this flap. And if you can control that, we got it made. But that's why James says, be quick to listen. Be slow to speak. Because we don't do that very well. Okay? We can say that I've got this all, but I'm sorry, but we don't. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. My grandmother Bryant used to tell me it'll always come back to you, sooner or later. She was a wise lady. Over the past couple of weeks or months, we have looked carefully at James 1:19 and 20. And James is giving a real command that many Christians today struggle with. And I've just admitted to you that I struggle with that. And I'm not sure I'm in this little band alone. Okay? But you know, coming up in the coaching ranks, I learned a hard lesson. In order to get your point across, sometimes you had to be harsh and had to be direct. But many times I overdid this aspect and not enough of the directive, coaching, and teaching and encouragement. The last 15 or 20 years of my career, I learned to change that some. I walked into my classroom and I would say, I expect you to make an A. What do you think the kids looked at me and said? Ain't happening. I've never made anything but a C, and I'm not going to do any more than that. And at that, the harsh response would come. You know, Gideon was afraid of everybody, stomping stuff around. He's trying to hide, trying to do some threshing and things. And Jesus came to him and said, Gideon, you need to do this because you're a mighty warrior. Gideon said, no, I'm not. In fact, I'm the weakest of the weakest, and my whole tribe is weak. And then later on, Jesus told him, said, Gideon, I gave you some strength. You better go on that strength that I gave you. You see, we don't look at ourselves and say, because our words cut us down. Our words limit us. Our words hold us back, and they never should. The last 20 years of my teaching and coaching career, I have learned some real valuable lessons from older coaches. A couple of them from Albuquerque had told me, said, Coach, you know, you're kind of harsh. And they said this, if you tell them what to do, they'll listen better. Because if you tell them what not to do, they remember that. And that's what controls them. So if I tell them what not to do, or do I tell them what to do? Are you with me? Look at Scripture sometimes. It says, put this off, put this off, put this off. You notice how Scripture never stops? He turns it and says, put on this, put on this. You ever notice that? Take a hint from the way God wrote things. Let's look at a couple of verses, though. I want you to get your mind set on this before I make a real point. Psalm chapter 19 and verse 11 says this, and it should be a memory verse for everybody. May the words of my mouth and what I think about very deeply inside my being be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Matthew chapter 17, verse 9, Jesus looking out and he saw some issues. He said, from out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Now stop and think about one. Out of the heart, the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. But then go to Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. What does Jeremiah 17, 9 say? Think about this. Put these two together and think about it. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? You ever put those two together and thought about it? Got an issue, huh? I know this. You will learn a lot about a person. What a person's real values are, their personality and everything and what drives them, simply by listening to what they say. Now get this. I want you guys to grab this. Simply by listening to what they say. Or, hey, have you noticed what's happening in the legislature in Washington, D.C. right now? They're reading people's emails, and they're finding out there was some evil going on. Yes or no? Have you guys seen that? So you learn a lot about someone's by reading their emails. But you know what else you learn a lot about? By reading their text. By watching them when they post on social media. You see some things about people. And really what they say when they are in private. when you're one-on-one with them in a private setting, you notice who they really are by listening to what they say in private. That's kind of scary, huh? Another time is when they're emotional, and when it really fits here, slow to become angry. Proverbs chapter 11 tells us that a man with understanding doesn't say very much. I guess that kind of leaves me out, huh? Proverbs chapter 12 says that from the fruit of the lips a man is filled with good things. Proverbs chapter 15, the tongue of the wise commend knowledge, and mouth of fool gushes folly. Proverbs chapter 18 is full of instructions of what we say. And when we get to verse 21, well, it says the tongue is power of life and death. Let me ask you this. Why did James, guided by the Holy Spirit, say this? Be slow to speak. Why did he say that? What's the matter? Our emotions? What? We just respond, don't we? You ever notice something about those responses? You can't get them back. I want to talk about that in just a minute. That's kind of scary, huh? Because our mind just starts acting up, and then we just kind of let her blurt. You ever notice you can't reach out and grab those words and pull them back?
Oh, yeah.
You can't go, oh, sorry, and pull it back because it's gone. It's said. It's over. It's done. I want you guys to kind of grab this a minute. That's why James says, be slow to speak. Be careful. Think about it. Here was mine. You put your mind in action. You put your mouth in action before you put your mind in gear.
Yeah.
That sometimes is an issue, isn't it? I used to say it, you got your alligator mouth overloading the chickadee rear, and sometimes that really causes a problem. You ever thought about that one? I have done that more times than you guys understand. But what he really means is, what you say must be tempered, carefully spoken, thoughtfully presented. But I want to give you guys a couple of things, and we could be on this for the rest of the week. But we have to go eat, because sometime today we're going to have fried chicken and some other stuff. And so that's kind of important to me right now. That's bad. That's kind of sicko. I'm going to give you some guiding principles, though, the things I've learned and experienced over the many years of my life, my time as an educator and a coach. Much more now as we place Scripture as our guide for how we speak. What really happens when we speak? Who is affected when we speak? You see, we think that we can just say whatever and it's okay, and it's not. And I know this, that the last few years of my coaching career, I really had to adjust that. It was really different. The first few years, folks, I'm serious, I thought I had every answer. I thought everyone else was dumb, stupid, and ignorant, so I was going to let them know how dumb, stupid, and ignorant they were. And then when I opened my mouth, I identified something that was not good. And sometimes I wish I could go back to those places, but guys, I can't. I can't go back and pick up those words off the field. I can't pick those words up off the floor. I can't pick those words up. I can't. Now this is hard because we have a great fault. And I know you're going to look at me and go, you're really crazy about this, but have you ever noticed by raising children, what we do is we teach them to be quickly expressive with their lips. Now, how do we do that? As soon as they cry, what do? We try to fix the cry, don't we? So now that baby knows if I cry, I get what I want. And so what do I do when I get about 1 year old? I cry harder so I can get... Are you guys with me? So now we're programming into that kid, the more that they cry, the more that we respond. That's why sometimes you got to be real careful. but how you respond to that. But I want to talk to you about 3 separate sets of people. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, if you heard a couple of people, one of the kids said that this morning, it doesn't just affect the one you're speaking to. I want to talk about that a minute. I want you guys to listen very closely. I'm an anatomy physiology guy, so I want you to listen to what I'm telling you. The words we say will first affect the one who is speaking the words. How can that be? The words we say, first of all, are revealing of who you are, and I really are who you and I are when you are dealing with hurt or difficulty. The effect is this. You show what's important to you, and you show some... I want you to grab this. How does the brain work? In order for you to speak, what has to happen?
You have to have a thought.
It's a thought. Okay, in order for me to speak, it's a thought. I have to think about what I'm going to say, and it comes out of my mind. Most often you don't think about it right, it just comes out, yes or no. Okay? Now, but in order to initiate that speech, what happens? My mind has to tell my breath, my lips, everything else to do something, don't they? So now I am increasing that stimulus that just caused me to speak by speaking. But then when I speak, what happens? Matt hears what he speaks. Are you with me? So when he hears what he speaks, what does that do to what he just said? Goes back into his brain and reinforces what he just spoke. So if I speak negatively to other people, or I cut myself down, or I do things like that, what have I just done? I've increased that stimulus in the brain. God made this wonderful piece of machinery. And then we don't use it correctly. What happens when we keep making those negative, destructive, hurtful statements? They get stronger, and they get stronger. And I keep saying them, and what happens? They get stronger. Are you guys with me? You understanding this? That's why when I would coach a kid in the discus, I would not walk out and say, "You're not turning your left foot open enough." I would not say that. What would I need to say, Roger? Turn your foot more. You see what I'm saying? I said something so that I increased that stimulus in the brain. God has us set up that way. But if I tell them not to do something, what does their brain absorb? That not. Are you with me? So if you're not doing this, well, then I'm not. We think, well, that's crazy, but that's exactly how our brain responds. So if I told them they need to turn that foot and get their body around and dip it more, I would say, what do you need to do? Are you with me? What do you need to do? And we would increase that to where it became a natural thing for them, and we would say it over and over and over and over again. Why? Because the negative is always going to come back out if we let it. Are you guys with me? It's going to affect the person who is speaking first. So if we're making negative, hurtful statements, it's always going to affect us because that's all we're going to see is those negative, hurtful statements. Are you guys with me? Yes. That's the way we see things. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 24 says, "Pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul, and healing to the bone." You know, the kids this morning had a hard time with that. I don't know, who was here when I made about 4 or 5 girls sit on the front row? Who was here when I did that? Were you here? You remember that? You remember how it was just like, oh my gosh? Why? Jane, why was that so hard?
Because we're not used to hearing people say you're beautiful or positive things.
Yeah. Roger? See, if I walk up and said, "Man, you're just a great person. I just really appreciate everything you're doing, and you're so..." You know, Judy stood up inside that classroom today and said that to one of the girls in there, and everybody's going, this is weird. And it is, it's weird. Because it's not normal for us to look at somebody and make a compliment. Stop and think. Our whole social environment has been encapsulated by negativity and hate. It's normal. When's the last time you've been called a bigot? I'm serious. If you let them know what you believe, you're a bigot. You're a hater. They have been programmed to believe that. And you know how they program them? They make them say it over and over and over again. Those are haters. Those are bigots. Those people are racist. Those people are this. And they make that person say it. Why? They want to program that person's mind. Are you with me? That's how it works. Go back. I want you guys to do this sometime. Sit down and study the big lie. Do it. Sit down and study the big lie. You're going to see some names and some things over there. You know what they tell them? It doesn't matter if it's the truth or not. Say it over and over again and say it loudly over and over again. Pretty soon it becomes the truth in their mind. Guys, that's the way our world is going right now. We cannot be that way. We are different. We are sanctified. We are different than those people, so we are not going to say those things. Now, what does that tell us to do? I'll do this. I'll look at that person and say, you're lying right through your teeth. I'm not a bigot. I would tell them right away. I would let them know. We have to understand, folks, you have to grab this very much. You must say things that are true, honest, helpful, encouraging. Are you with me? Everybody understand? Then I want to say something else. This is something that Judy and I talked about, for the last 6 or 8 months. And it's very difficult for us. Because men, we don't do this very well. When Judy and I first got married, saying I love you was not part of my speech. It was not. Went into my marriage for about 5 or 10 years before I learned to tell my wife I loved her. Now sometimes people look at you and they say, well, that's crazy. You shouldn't be acting like that. You're right. I shouldn't. But why do you? Mike, why would you do that over and over again? Why would you walk in and tell Rufina you love her over and over again? That's in your brain. You reinforce that every time you say it. What does it do to your brain, that thought in your brain when you say it over and over again? Are you with me? And you reinforce that thought. Are you guys with me? Guys, that's a godly attribute. That's the way things work. And we have got to grasp this. Now, ladies, you do it good. Most often. But guys, we need to work on this. Then the words are going to affect the people that you are speaking to. Our words will either promote a more healthy relationship with someone else, or they will destroy those valuable personal relationships. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 11 says, the mouth of a righteous man is a fountain of life. Proverbs chapter 15 verse 23, a man finds joy in giving an apt reply, and how good is a timely word. Sometimes people look at me and they say, yeah, but you need to get this. I remember dealing with my administration. Okay, can I admit something to you? I never dealt with the administration very good. Never did. I'm a very hard-line, cocky person when I have authority over me. I really am. I have lots of trouble with that. So sometimes I would just clam up. I want you to look at this. Sometimes I would just clam up. So when I look at this, a man finds joy in giving an apt reply. Slow to a thoughtful reply. Slow to speak. Then it says, and how good is a timely word. Back to my grandmother Bryant. Lived to be 100 years old. And she told me, if you can't say anything good, Jody, then you don't say anything good at all. Now, those are hard words, yes or no? She didn't say shut up. She just said, if you can't say nothing good, just don't say nothing. That's the timely word thing. And I think many people don't realize how heavy that is. But I'm going to say something. Someone brought this up just a minute ago. I'm going to tell you something. The words will always do something and go somewhere. Are you listening to me? And when you say those words, they're not just going to affect the person that's speaking them and the person you're speaking to, but I'm going to give you a warning. Those words will always get around and find their way back to the one you are speaking about. So I'm warning you. Don't say what is on your mind until you have carefully considered whether what is on your mind is God honoring and honoring to the Lord. Slow to speak. A lot in those 3 words, isn't there? Oh, but we are quick to verbally respond, aren't we? Yes or no? Sometimes we stop and read a few verses. I went back to Matthew chapter 7, and I read a middle part of Matthew chapter 7. And read that chapter sometimes. I want you to do something. This is my suggestion for you. Praise others in public. Be hesitant and careful how you critique in private. Are you with me? Praise others in public. And be careful how you critique in private. Careful of judgment. Be careful of words of accusation. Be careful of words of blame. You know, when I was younger, and even my first few years of coaching, folks, I had these great statements I could make from the sideline. I thought they were great. Now, I'm sure that the people out there with the striped shirts on and the people in the stands did not think they were very great, and I still struggle with that. I can make a cutting word, but tell me what it makes my Lord look like and what it makes me look like when it's all over. That's why this morning, you know, it's very difficult for me to work with kids now because I've been so separated from them, but just to have kids look at another kid and make a compliment, that is hard. That is very, very difficult. But if you ever, are you listening to me, young people? If you ever learn to say good things to and about other people, and you learn to make it as a very valuable part of your life, I'm going to give you something, and you need to understand this. You are going to become someone special one day. People beg for people who say good words. They beg for those at the workplace. They beg for them. They want somebody to walk in the door that'll say something good. I had a young lady, and she should never, ever come out to throw the discus. Ever. See, the discus is a little round dish-looking thing, and you put your hands on it, and you go through a ring, and you throw it out in the middle somewhere. Every day I would go out and say, today's the day I'm going to tell Vanessa she needs to go find something else to do. And every day I would walk out there. And every day this thing would come over and say, don't you dare say a word. And she was terrible. She was uncoordinated going through the ring. She couldn't throw very far. And she would try. She really worked hard. But something told me, don't say a word. Just go coach her. You know, at the end of the year, this little 5'2", sawed-off, untalented little gal was a state champion. Why? What would have happened if I'd gone out there and said, Vanessa, you're sorry, you can't do this. Why are you out here trying? Why are you wasting my time? What would have happened? That's right. You know what they told me when I was that age? You're never going to be worth anything. And you'll never make anything of yourself. And you'll never, ever again put a uniform on because you're that sorry. Guys, I'm telling you, words are so heavy. And I remember that day sitting there signing a professional contract and thinking in my mind, I wish that sucker could see me now. Deep in my being, I remember signing a full scholarship. I had to pay for my first year to get there. And thinking, I wish he could see me now. Guys, let's remember this. Adults, every time you see one of these younger people in this room, I want you to walk over and tell them how special they are. Will you do that with me? It's so important for you guys to do that. So important for us to, as Christians, to pick each other up. The verse that McKenna said this morning, Ephesians 4:29, says this, but only say things that will encourage and lift them up. Now, do you want to say something else? Okay, come on now. Be honest. Do you want to say something else? Yes. And you're going to bite your tongue until you think about it, and then you tell that young person how beautiful they are. You tell that young person how wonderful they are. You tell that person how great they are. But we need to do that with each other. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 14 through 17 gives us some very serious cautions of getting caught up in words of division. You know, really, I guess if you got caught up in the words of division, that could be a Bible study in itself, couldn't it? It could be rough. I want us to do this. I want to challenge you guys right now. Guys, we have a habit, and no matter who you are in this room, you go home and things aren't going right or somebody did something wrong. And guys, it's going to be me sometimes. Can I just tell you that? If I've offended and I've done something like that, I just want to tell you, sorry, that's just me. That's my flesh. And there's a war going on. Remember I talked to you about that 2 weeks ago? There's a war going in our being. There's a spirit against the flesh. Paul talks about it 2 or 3 times. We have that. You and I. And we've got to grasp this. But after reading Colossians chapter 4, verse 6, is my speech is full of grace? Is it seasoned with salt? Is it a good taste in public? But how about in private? Is it in good taste? Is it seasoned with salt? I want us to really commit to each other, though. I want us to grab this. Commit, you and me, commit to God today. Can we do this? Slow to speak. Are you with me? Slow to speak. Let's make a commitment to God. But let's not just leave it there. Let's make a commitment to each other. Let's all carefully consider what we say. James said, be slow to speak. Let's choose our words carefully. Let's be careful about the terms we use for ourselves. This is something that was hard I noticed for the kids. They could not look at themselves and say good things. Am I right? You guys had a hard time, didn't you? To look in the mirror and say, but I can do this. But I can be this. But I can be this special person. They couldn't do that. We need to show them, adults, how to do this. Teach them how. Teach them how to stand up and say, yes, I have a fault, but I can work on that. Yes, I have this, but I can work on that. I am good at this. First person is the first person that's speaking. Let's be careful about terms we use for ourselves. Have you guys ever gone through that? Guys, this is Joe. Okay, this is me. I cut this thing 3 times and it's still too short. You ever said that? It just hit you, didn't it? Took a while. Oh, wow. Have you ever called yourself stupid? You know, you're out there and I'm trying to cut this piece of wood to fit, and for some odd reason it's 1 inch, exactly 1 inch off. How did I do that? But you want to tell me? Come on, Joe, you can do better than this. This is really, come on, what's wrong with you? You ever talk to yourself like that? I don't like it when I'm losing the argument. But we have to be careful how we talk even to ourselves. Let's be careful and encouraging and helpful with our words, with our family and our church family. In all we are dealing with in our society, we must try harder now to speak honestly and carefully when speaking with other people. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Are you guys with me? Colossians chapter 3. Do I have that one? Yes. And this is where it comes down to. Whatever you do. That means when you go on the job. That means where you're in Walmart. That means when you're down at Aces. That means when you're out shopping. Whatever you do, no matter whatever's going on, now we could leave this one out though, couldn't we? Whether in, say it loud, whether in word or deed. Do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him. No matter what you do, the first consideration is, what are you saying? That's the first consideration. Is everybody with me? That's where our commitment needs to come. Because God knows that you and I have a problem. And that problem is we have this flap. And He said, I gave you 2 ears so you can be quick to listen. And I gave you 1 mouth so you could be slow to speak. Can I just say to you guys, and I don't know, anybody want to witness with me, that's fine. I struggle with this. Can I get a witness? Okay. We've got to grab this, okay? If we are so grounded in that, let's really work on it. Let's really work on saying good things, but you have to consciously do it. Walk up to somebody and say, you know what? It's good to see you today. You know what I'm saying, Matt? I walk up to Matt and say, man, Matt, it's good to see you, man. And you've got to do that. Well, it's not that necessary. Yes, it is. Because the more you speak that way, the easier it becomes. That's why I want these young people to start grasping this thing of saying, I'm going to say good things about those people around me. Well, you older, younger, you really older, younger people, same thing. If we make it a habit, if you say it over and over again, it starts to change how you view people and you view life. Oh, but that's so silly. Yes, it is. But it is so effective. Over my time, the last 20 years of my career, when I really changed what I was trying to say to my kids, I can't tell you the number of times. And the last group that was really effective was in 2007. You never heard any of those kids say anything negative. Even when things fell apart, they would pick each other up and say, hey, you're okay, we're going to make this happen. How about us adults? When things don't go well and things don't go right, let's say some good things. Can I get a witness?
Amen.
Let's work on it. Let's work on it.